but I think, at least for me in my context, I'm constantly having to wrestle with how much of my weekly schedule goes to writing the message, researching the message, internalizing the message, allowing the Holy Spirit to do a work within me, and knowing when to step away from that, and kind of getting down in the trenches and loving and caring for the people, doing the work of shepherding.
Welcome to the Enduring Church Podcast, hosted by Nathan Castleberry and Michael Davis, helping pastors grow their churches while equipping the body to love their neighbors. Yeah, their literal neighbors. Nathan, we are back. How you doing, bud?
I'm doing well. I'm actually really excited about today's topic because it is literally my day-to-day struggle.
Nice. Well, I mean, you told me you had it all figured out and you're the absolute expert when it comes to this. So,
that sounds like something I would say.
You're just and you are the most humble human being ever. Like,
when you're so gifted with humility, you don't get enough credit.
Well, thank you for joining us for another episode of the Enduring Church Podcast. I am Michael Davis.
And I am Nathan Castleberry, the humble pastor.
The humble pastor. So today we are going to be figuring it out and having all the answers for finding the balance between preaching and shepherding. So
yeah.
I'm just really humbled myself to be in your presence, oh wise one, guru.
Yeah, well, I think at the end of this episode, we might be checking our analytics and see that we saw a significant drop off of subscribers.
I think you're probably right. Thank you for checking out the Enduring Church Podcast on YouTube. If you could do us a favor, hit the subscribe button and the bell icon to make sure that you're aware whenever a new episode drops. Also, if you got some time, give us a thumbs up and also leave a comment. Really helps us with the algorithm. Well, now back to the show. So let's just jump into it. There's a lot to talk about. So, what would you say are the unique challenges that pastors like you face when trying to balance your preaching responsibilities with also shepherding the flock?
Yeah. So, some of this, I'm not exactly sure how this scales. I've been in ministry for a long time, but I've never been the lead pastor for a church bigger than what I'm pastoring right now. So just understanding a little bit of context. 300-person church. I've got a right-hand, amazing associate pastor who, he's in my teaching rotation. He and I both have a high value on shepherding and pastoral care. So some of the stuff we're saying may not be apples to apples, but it's stuff that is important to us. I think pastoring is, the word means shepherding, right? So that's a really, really important thing. But I know as the organization grows, sometimes the church needs more of you as a senior leader, and you have to really build out a shepherding team. Maybe that's deacons in some churches. So again, just want to give a little bit of disclaimer. I don't think this is a one size fits all conversation. So with that in mind, I do think the thing that is a one size fits all is just the time management of all this, right? To do the text justice and to spend what you feel is, a faithful amount of time of really digging into the text and what is it saying? Not is it saying what I want it to say, and does it fit in with this illustration idea that I've got? But am I really being faithful to the text? Is something that I just think is it has to be a process. And everyone has their own process. Some people are manuscriptors, some people are outline, but whatever it is, don't rob it of the time that it deserves. When you look at the book of Titus and this listing out qualifications for church leadership, almost all of them are character-based. The one competency-based portion of being an overseer is rightly dividing the word. So give it the time that it's due. But there is a significant amount of time that I think should go toward leading and caring for the church. And for me, the way I'm wired, I'm a people person. If I spend too much time in front of my laptop and whatnot, I get into a really sad place. So I need to some of the pastoral care is a get to for me. It's not just obligatory.
Yeah.
But I think, at least for me in my context, I'm constantly having to wrestle with how much of my weekly schedule goes to writing the message, researching the message, internalizing the message, allowing the Holy Spirit to do a work within me, and knowing when to step away from that, and kind of getting down in the trenches and loving and caring for the people, doing the work of shepherding. So I know what I just said is kind of the whole premise of this episode, but I just
Right.
want to label that, and just acknowledge and hopefully express that with a little bit of grace. Is I do think this is a tension that pastors feel at all sizes of the church, is how do I divide my time? And so I will just say this. Um, I, I do think we have maybe undervalued shepherding and overvalued preaching in modern day church circles. And I know that's a broad brushstroke, but I would love to have a conversation about how we figure out like a healthy midpoint and swing that pendulum back to the middle and figure out how do we provide adequate bandwidth to both aspects of this part of our job.
Yeah, I mean, listen, or you can do what a lot of people do, which is just rip off Tim Keller or someone else, and then you don't have to worry about any of that.
Yeah. Yep. Yep.
No, it is interesting that as churches grow, it almost seems like the larger the church grows, it's like, okay, now you can focus all of your effort on being that public speaker, right? It's in a sense, you grow bigger and bigger and bigger, and then you jettison more and more of that shepherding responsibility to other people. So
Yeah, well, I mean, as your staff grows, as your budget goes, as your programs go, that requires more just sheer leadership. And so,
yeah,
the last thing I want to do is guilt trip pastors for growing in their
no, for sure.
leadership. And I think I've shared this before. Like, to me, there's three main skills that pastors need to have, and it's teaching, leading, shepherding. And so for me, I would add that third category as part of the equation that we're trying to solve for here, is leading the organization spiritually, leading the organization organizationally, and doing the hard work of preparing a sermon that will help feed the flock and equip them for the work of ministry. But I will just say this. So we are a part of a family of 3 churches, and we just gathered, we're recording this close to Christmas 2024. We just gathered all 3 of our staffs, had a big kind of celebration, and we're just everyone's sharing stories of what God did over this last year. And the biggest of our 3 churches, they're about a 22 to 2,500 person church, a bigger staff. And Chris, the senior pastor there, what he put on the screen for his like most rewarding moment this year was him at a county jail, and he read a letter that one of the inmates wrote him. He spends a few like Tuesdays a month there,
Yeah.
and just the life change that was able to take place, the discipleship that was able to take place, and just the gratitude expressed in that letter. His name's Chris. He's like, man, this was a top moment for me in 2024. And Chris he's a little bit more task oriented than people oriented. And it was really cool just to see that you can be leading a big growing church and hiring staff and balancing budgets and all the things, and still be faithful to that blocking and tackling Matthew 25, caring for the least of these. So I just think it's possible to do both, and I've got a friend who's doing it at a very high level.
That's great. I'm wondering how much of this, and maybe you can, because again, you've been in all size churches. I wonder how much of this is actually inflicted upon pastors because of the expectations of the people who actually come there. I've heard so many folks who said, "I've left because I wasn't being fed." You actually said those words, where people felt like. I wonder how many times people leave because they didn't enjoy the preaching or the worship,
Yeah.
as compared to they left because there wasn't enough missions, there wasn't enough shepherding. It's interesting.
Well, listen, people will leave a church for anything.
Yeah, no, that's a good point.
I've been asked about, why can't we have, a cross on stage and all those things, right?
Yeah.
I didn't know there was interior design instructions beyond the construction of the temple, right? Like, I know the tent of meeting and the temple had, detailed curtain ring instructions, but I don't know if that like shows up in the New Testament church. But I will say this, this past Sunday, actually, I told my congregation, I said, tell me you don't read your Bible without telling me you don't read your Bible. And then I ratted off a few things, and one of them is, I'm just not being fed. I'm like, I said,
Yeah.
look, if you're depending on me to feed you, you will be an anemic, very sick person if you only eat one meal a week.
Yeah.
And most
Fair.
people don't even show up to church once a week, right? So I do think, we as pastors can get bent out of shape over bad emails and complaining emails. And, for every one critical email, there's probably 10 people that didn't send a thankful email.
Right.
And so when it comes to just understanding the complaints and negativity, we live in a very consumeristic society, and that just comes with the territory. There is Karen energy in the men
Yeah.
and women of the consumeristic church. So that's where you kind of have to realize that whole audience of one. I'm serving these people, but they're not my audience. They're the congregation. I'm serving them. I'm not performing for them. So I'm not really concerned about their evaluation of my sermons. I don't take requests for sermons. I'm not here as your entertainment. So,
Free bird.
yeah, right. So again, I'm here to serve and equip. And hopefully part of that equipping is teaching you how to begin feeding yourself instead of being reliant on, one meal a week to keep you close to Jesus.
Nice. So okay, let's get practical. So
Yeah.
how can a pastor figure out that balance? Because listen, we've talked about this in previous episodes. If you allow yourself, you will be completely monopolized by the people who, and frankly, need you. So you have to find that balance. You have to not also, do self-care, right? We had that accountability discussion. So you need to mind yourself so you don't fall into any type of sin. So how do you balance all of those different things while still having a strong focus on shepherding and then also preparing for Sunday morning?
All right, so I'm going to talk out of both sides of my mouth.
Okay, fair.
While I do think that we should make shepherding great again.
Okay.
I will say this: not every congregational care scenario is a pastoral care scenario.
Yeah.
So I mean, and the apostles demonstrated that for us in Acts chapter 6 with creating that
The
church.
deacon. Yeah.
Yeah, right. So not every single thing that your congregation sends forth as a prayer request or as a crisis is something that you personally have to get involved in.
Right.
And I think building up a team that loves to do the work of benevolence and compassion is a way to help have a ministerial presence in all of those pain points that doesn't necessitate a pastoral presence. So for us, we call that our lay ministry team, and it's mostly husbands and wives, but it's a bunch of people that we raise up that we do a lot of training on how to do some spiritual, psychological first aid. Like you're not counseling, you're not pastoring, you're not advice giving, but you might be skilled. And here's a few discerning questions you can ask to kind of figure out what are some good next steps. And so this is what a lot of our membership class actually orients around is when you're a member at our church, it's basically you giving us permission to really proactively care for you. You get placed on one of these people's lists, and they are proactively reaching out to the members of this church saying, what's going on? How can the church help? And we tell everybody at our membership class, this is not to keep me and Leonard, the two pastors of the church, out of ministry. It's actually to guarantee that more ministry happens. And then that team has some check boxes, for lack of a better word, a decision-making grid to know when something needs to get escalated to a pastor. So just kind of structuring that's not a novel idea to me. That's Acts 6 and 7, seeing the biblical office of deacon becoming what it was supposed to be and not like a voting leadership control of pastoral leadership. It's a way to really care for the flock and serve the flock. And that also, I think when you look at what the apostles were saying out of their response to, the food distribution and the complaints that were happening, they're like, we have to teach the word. We have to pray and
Yeah.
teach the word. So this allows us to elevate both of these to their proper placement. It allows us to cherish and protect the time that needs to go into the preaching and preparation of the word without diminishing the need to love well. And so it's a way to make sure that both get priority.
I think you hit the nail on the head. I think the problem is that for a lot of churches, they misunderstand the whole office of deacon.
Right.
And one of the nice things about, I've really been, obviously, as I had to go through the interview and through the whole process and really researching just the whole the office of deacon, is that a lot of times a lot of churches are just, they misunderstand it and they're not properly leveraging deacons. So what happens is that either they're serving as like kind of this weird offshoot of elder, or they're just basically administrative. But at the end of the day, deacons are the ones that are supposed to serve. I forgot who I heard this, but they're really focused on making sure that poverty, affliction, and loneliness are not a barrier to the joy of the gospel for those in the church.
Right.
And I think that if a deacon or the board of deacons within a church were equipped to do that, a lot of the shepherding, quote unquote, shepherding responsibilities would be taken off the responsibility of a senior pastor or a preaching pastor or an executive pastor, and given to the men, and we can talk about women, and who are responsible. I'm going to totally get flamed on that one. That are, again, that God has ordained to do these types of things.
Yeah. Yeah. So I will say this. I think remaining in some level of proximity
No, for sure.
to the pain points of your congregation will only help your preaching. And what we can talk, I'm going to circle back to that and here in just a little bit. But not everybody in the church is gifted with the preaching and teaching and dividing of the word.
Right.
You are the pastor, and that's something that can't really be delegated.
Right.
The shepherding and the congregational care is not necessarily unique to you. And so I think that's what the apostles were saying, is like, we didn't get called by Jesus to run a food distribution program. You are not a charity. You are not just a regular nonprofit. And that's not to diminish those things. Like, I'm on the board of a food insecurity based nonprofit. I'm a big believer in those type of things, but you are in the discipleship business first and foremost, the equipping of the saints. Now, one of the ways we equip the saints is by meeting the needs, and we see that as that is just baked into the value system of the early church. But what we see over and over again, Carey Nieuwhof talks about this a lot. Pastors who really take that seriously tend to get stuck around the 200 person mark because they end up trying to plug all these holes. And so I think, again, structure your leadership, have an entire ministry team that helps you have an adequate span of ministerial pastoral care. And it's biblical. The apostles did it. So can you. I joke with our congregation and I say this: I'm a decent pastor, but I'm a terrible Holy Spirit. I'm not omnipresent. I'm not all knowing, and I'm not all powerful. So I can't show up in more than one place at one time. So not every, and we talk about this a lot in our membership class because I want to set realistic expectations.
Right.
I'm not going to be at every hospital bed. I'm going to one actually. As soon as we're done taping day, I'm bringing M&Ms to this old man in our church who just had a foot surgery. M&Ms are his favorite thing, but he's got a small group, men's ministry, all these other people who are showing up as well. I'm just showing up because I want to. So I don't want to diminish the power of that. But set expectations with your congregation that you will not be there for every crisis, for every nick and bruise and scraped knee. but there is a team who is in place to help, and they can help channel the pastors into the places where, there is some pastoral counseling or discernment that needs to be applied.
Yeah, I wonder how much of this is the conflation between like maybe even just a misunderstanding of the whole concept of shepherding, right? I mean, when you're shepherding the flock, right, you are guiding them, you're moving them. And I think for some folks, and I think I'm guilty of it myself, I think that where meeting needs is actually conflated with shepherding. And I don't think it is. I think that's wrong.
Right. Yeah, I could agree with you on that. I mean, I think it's a part of it.
Right.
I don't think it is the main thrust of it. I think what we see in Ephesians 4 is, that fivefold ministry: apostle, prophet, pastor, teacher, evangelist. I mean, it literally spells out the job description. Their role is to equip the saints for the work
Right.
of ministry. And so, um, who are you equipping for the work of congregational care? Who are you equipping for doing the work of deacon? But just like Paul reminds, I think Timothy, Paul reminds Timothy, hey, don't forget to do the work of an evangelist. Like I would say, there's probably a little addendum that, type reminder, but don't don't forget to do the work of an evangelist. We should be out there sharing our faith with lost people. I think that's a
Yep.
good reminder. We can get insulated and never be around people outside the church. I think we could also get so focused on leading the church organizationally and writing the sermons that we might sometimes forget to do the work of the shepherd as well. So that's why I think we have to figure out how to show up in the places that really matter, pastorally, in a shepherding, demeanor, in a shepherding capacity, but also being able to have some qualified people that you can share that load with. It helps you. It's going to help you not burn out, and it's going to help decentralize the leadership in a really healthy way.
Yeah. Okay. So I'm going back to practical because I think so how do you do it? Like what's your day to day
Yeah.
as far as like preaching and then also setting time for, relief ministries and taking care of folks and counseling. So actually let's just focus on the preaching. How do you do that? What's your week look like?
So the more and more I talk to my friends, I think I'm a little bit weird in this.
Okay.
I start my week with sermon prep. I Mondays and Tuesdays are my main days. I like to, between lunch and 5 o'clock on Tuesdays, have an outline
Yeah.
sent to my media team. That helps me just with the way I'm kind of like creatively wired. If I don't have a, l- a the bulk of the work done by Tuesday, it's going to meander and yeah, it's going to get squirrely. So for me, Mondays and Tuesdays are my days that I try not to take any pastoral meetings.
Yeah.
It's got to be a really crisis type case for me to make some time. I try to really protect that. So for me, it's time blocking. Monday and Tuesday are mostly sermon prep, a little bit of admin starting off Monday morning just to kind of get my calendar in order.
Yeah.
But then Wednesdays and Thursdays are the days that are more like the meeting days. Fridays are flex for me.
Recording the Enduring Church
Yeah, I
podcast.
like doing I like doing some recording on this. But Saturdays, so here's where I think I'm a little bit different as well. I don't, I the vast majority of Saturdays are just like truly I'm off. I'm with family. We're hanging
Yeah.
out in our cul-de-sac. Um, like I really, I mean, a lot of people kind of revisit their sermons Saturday nights and start, kind of getting in the zone. When I tried that, I actually found myself preaching worse on Sunday mornings.
Yeah. Yeah.
I'm very, very relationally people oriented. And so, that's just how I Sabbath. And so for me, I really don't even touch it. I don't even look at it on Saturdays. I barely answer text. I put I turn notifications off on Saturdays. And so that's kind of my personal rhythm. Mondays and Tuesdays, I'm working on the sermon. Wednesdays and Thursdays, I'm trying to work in and on the church. And then Fridays is a flex day for whatever, loose ends need to be addressed. Saturdays are my true Sabbath. And I get up on Sunday mornings and kind of start the spiritual prep and warfare. And then, you know, do Sunday mornings. I'm also kind of weird about this. Like, so I love Sunday mornings. I don't come home exhausted on Sundays. Like, to me, preaching is a privilege. It's exhilarating. It's intimidating, but it's exhilarating.
Yeah.
It's this weird thing where it's terrifying and a privilege all at the same time. And then I get to be around a bunch of people I love. So, like, for me, I don't really come home on Sundays and crash because I'm like just so filled up.
Okay. Well, good. So, in short, don't procrastinate, and then you'll be fine, and then you'll have plenty of time.
That's for me. But I encourage people. I think
Yeah.
what I'd
Yeah.
love people to practically take away from this is like know yourself, know
Yeah.
your tendencies, and you time block calendaring your tasks is a huge life hack, because as things change on your calendar, if you kind of see what it's going to cost you,
Yeah.
from a time allocation standpoint. So I don't keep a lot of like tasks on reminders. I try to really calendar my tasks and my and whatnot. Like, it even says like sermon prep on these blocks, just so that they become more protected. So I think but that's what works for me. I think the idea is take all the inventories, know, what your temperament, what your disc, what your Enneagram, like whatever those, inventories of self look like. I think lean into that and build your week in a way that is going to promote your best productivity, your the most sustainable pace. And I think that's also going to, I think it has a significant way to prevent burnout, because if you protect your rest and your
Yeah.
recovery, these are preventative. It's a lot easier to prevent this stuff than it is to come back from it once it goes sideways.
100%. It's like, actually for lay people, this makes a lot of sense too, right? It's we all have certain situations and certain, I got guardrails, but certain things that we can do to make ourselves more productive. When we don't do them, then we have a tendency to fail in what we try to do. So the more we understand what works for us and what doesn't, this makes a ton of sense.
Yeah.
So now that we've decided that there is a bit of a conflation between taking care of folks and then also shepherding, which again, it's not, there is overlap. How can a strong focus on the preaching actually complement the shepherding element of your
Yeah.
work?
Yeah. Great question. Um, I I think this is a tension. We we have a privilege of being able to spend so much time in the Word.
Yeah.
I get paid to study the Bible, and so I can fixate on, oh, well, this Greek thing or this Hebrew thing or this contextual thing, and how great it is that I get to spend time contemplating and being enamored by that. I love that. Um, I I don't know that that is the same place that a lot of congregation members are. A lot of
Yeah.
congregation members are like, I'm coming to church to see if God will, help help save my marriage.
Yeah.
So I think we have to understand this whole idea of Jesus called us to be fishers of men.
Yeah.
And so a good fisherman knows how to bait the hook
And which
according
bait
to
works. Yeah,
yeah,
exactly.
right. Good fishermen don't just use the bait that they think looks cool. It's like, what's going to be effective? But I think we as preachers can sometimes fixate on like, oh, well, I saw this on the Bible Project, or and
Yeah.
we can like think we're going to bring this great revelation. It's like, well, that's maybe something that only a practitioner or a professional is going to appreciate. So save that for your conferences and save that for your staff meetings.
Yeah. Fair.
I think you know the condition of the flock
Yeah.
and build your preaching calendar around the discipleship hurdles that your people are facing. That to me is how your preaching becomes shepherding. We are not just making speeches, casting vision, and trying to get people to be excited about the things that excite us theologically. We have to ask ourselves on a weekly, monthly, quarterly basis, however you plan your teaching calendar. God, am I giving them what they need, or am
Yeah.
I just giving them the things that I think are
Interesting.
are
Yeah.
neat and interesting?
Yeah, that's because I mean, it could go totally sideways. Well, listen, we all know very large churches that preach motivational talks and how to be better husbands and better, with our finances and all this other stuff. And that's stuff that people will like. It's not necessarily, and I think you hit the nail on the head here, because what you're doing is you're teaching. You're teaching. And you wouldn't expect a professor to guide their students by just coming up with random things and random orders. And there is a progression, there is a growth that there is expected among the students. And I'm wondering whether there has been, and maybe this is coming back to some of this attractional model of making this palatable to a worldly audience, rather than seeing yourself as the professor, as the expert of of not only what you're teaching, but also the expert on what your congregation needs.
So I'm gonna be a little bit of Switzerland here. Okay.
You always, because you have way more, all your pastor friends are going to flame you. No one's going to flame me.
So here's the I do think that so, we can't ignore the fact that people are inviting their unchurched friends to church, and so Paul wants us to be credible with outsiders in 1 Corinthians 14.
Oh, for sure.
Right. So I don't I don't want to overcorrect out of the seeker sensitive attractional model and just bury our heads in the sand. I do want to I don't want to treat the word relevant like it's a cuss word.
No, 100%.
Right. And I don't think you're saying that.
Yeah.
And so I think as we are building the preaching calendar, I think if we could reclaim the word relevant and think about it from not just how am I cool and what helps me establish street cred with outsiders and unchurched people, but I think how do I contextualize the word relevant into how is this relevant to the pain points that, and I'm going to call it discipleship hurdles, the things that are holding people back from being a more fully devoted follower, the things that are the crises in life that may have caused someone to be like, well, I've tried everything else. I wonder if church and Jesus and faith will work. We're fishers of men. So like these, in some ways, felt needs, topical type things really can be shepherding,
100%.
preaching with a shepherd mentality. So again, don't want to throw the baby out with the bathwater. But I do think that just speaking to only felt needs and only topical teaching, there's maybe some dangers in that where you're now teaching moralism and pragmatism. And I think if we do, or if we are faithful to the text and we are having a gospel centric teaching, you can't help but to be a better husband, a better father. If you're teaching the full counsel of God, it will inform all of the logistics of life. So again, so for me, it's like, that's why I'm trying to claim a little bit of a middle neutral ground. Is I do think we can repackage that idea of relevant preaching. And I think the way we do that is what's going to help me shepherd the people with the issues that they are facing.
Yeah. And again, it's the bait, right? There's certain, you're going to be in certain communities that will know a lot about some things and almost nothing about others. And
yes.
So I think that this is where a good pastor will oftentimes, again, this isn't about copying Tim Keller or any other pastor or, going into your Spurgeon, that green set that every pastor I know has, and then just pulling something out. It's my community and my church have specific needs and specific gaps that I need to help.
I think it's worth drilling down on that. I would say to the preachers listening in, we do need to, from just a purely like culturally prophetic standpoint, we need to know what's going on in the world.
Yeah.
We need to know, we need to be aware of some of the culture wars. However, what is happening around the dining room table, in the congregation that you are shepherding,
Yeah.
should get more of your attention than trending topics on Twitter. So I would say spend as much time reading prayer requests as you do reading all of the hot topics happening on X
Preach.
and Twitter.
100%.
That is how your preaching becomes a shepherding mechanism. Spend time in the lobby. Pray with people on Sundays. Don't just rush to your green room. Find out what the people are dealing with. This is the posture of Jesus. He didn't have somewhere to retreat to when he was done with the Sermon on the Mount. He goes from teaching to taking this kid's Lunchable and feeding 5,000 because he had compassion for the crowd. And that was following the death of John the Baptist, when he was literally trying to go on a mountain and pray. Jesus' green room were mountains.
Yeah. Yep.
So like on Sunday mornings, man, like it's like you're there for the people. I don't think it's asking too much of the preachers to get out in the lobby and see how your messages are being received. Find out what's going on with people. When we were, and I want to shout out Judd Wilhite, the pastor I used to work for at Central, massive church.
Yeah.
He would tell us, the pastors and staff, it's not church unless you've prayed over somebody in the lobby. And I love that about him. He doesn't retreat to a green room. He goes out and visits people and talks with them and finds out what's going on. And that helps shape his sermons and helps shape his pastoral heart that comes out in his preaching.
Yeah. I mean, I think fundamentally, I think that as we're understanding the state of our churches, it'll help not just in regards to inform what to teach, but at what level. I mean, let's take this to the secular space, and we're talking about, let's say, high school. You're going to be teaching, freshmen like algebra. You're going to be teaching it very differently than junior calculus, because there's an understanding that these kids understand less about certain things than others. And I think that this is going back to what you were talking about before. It's super easy, and we've seen it, right? Where pastors there's something that's super interesting to them, or they had a really funny story, and then in a sense, they're completely creating their sermon based on that, rather than really just kind of feeding their flock. And so here's a question for you, and this is going to be throwing the hand grenade into this room right before we're about to stop. Does a lot of this get fixed by just preaching through books of the Bible?
Interesting conversation. So
With a few minutes left, I'm just going to throw that in there.
So I'm just going to weigh in. Let's just jump in. To me, it's a both and instead of an either or. I've heard incredible sermons that are totally topical, and I've heard incredible sermons that are just incredibly exegetical and expository and whatnot. And I just don't know that I see Jesus or even the pastoral epistles talking that much about the style of preaching.
You're right.
The instruction is rightly divide the word. And then it doesn't say rightly, and by rightly dividing the word, I mean this, that, or the other. So for me, again, when we meet a few times a year as a creative team, and we plan out several months in advance of high level sermon series, things that we feel like we need to address. And it shapes up in the form of, sometimes it's character studies. Sometimes it's book studies. Sometimes it's just like, what is the common theme in the prayer request? Like, what's rising to the surface that our congregation needs to be biblically addressed. So I think ministry needs should drive ministry model.
Yeah,
that's
fair.
my personal opinion. So that's why I'm never gonna just weigh in and say it's got to be exegetical, expository, verse by verse, or it's got to be more topical and relevant, and this is how that's how you bait your hook, so people want to bite the hook. Life is not that linear.
Fair.
And churches are not franchises, cookie cutters. Like what's going on in your congregation, and what has God positioned you as their pastor, as their vision carrier, as their teacher, like what do they need to, what needs to be biblically addressed, and then say, okay, now that I've identified some of those things, what's going to be the best approach? And so for me, it changes honestly from series to series.
So there you go. So not only are you the guru, you're also the humble guru. So listen, that was actually, I mean, that was super relevant. I think the problem is that you can't be formulaic, and you've got to, and you said this before, preach to the church you've got, not the church you wish you had.
Yeah.
And shepherd the church you've got, not the church you wish you had. And I think that fundamentally, I think that you're gonna do well in that situation.
Well, whenever you get to a level of expertise in any craft, whether it's music or, working on a car or barbecue, there are going to be things that you appreciate and you geek out about that nobody on the consuming end of that service or product will really, really appreciate. And that's okay. That's okay. I mean, maybe there's a part of this gift that is a gift that's just for you, and enjoy it. Like, I'm at a place now where even though I'm people oriented and extrovert, I enjoy the prep of the sermon as much as the delivery of the sermon because of what the Holy Spirit's doing in my life. So I don't want people to feel guilty for fixating on little things, but maybe sometimes that's just for you. Maybe sometimes it's for the congregation as well. But don't walk home from Sunday defeated because they didn't see it the way that you saw it. Don't be mad at your church when your church reveals where they're at. Have a shepherd's heart for them, and speak to the things that are going to help them become more fully devoted followers of Jesus.
Yep. And then go to conferences where you can totally geek out with a bunch of other theology nerds. So.
Yes.
Well, listen, Nathan, thank you so much for joining me. This has been a lot of fun, and I learned a lot.
Oh man, this is stuff that gets me really excited. So I was glad to spend an episode that's really preaching focused but doing it through a shepherding lens. So hopefully this has been helpful for a few folks out there.
Awesome. Well, listen, thank you everyone for joining us, and we'll catch you guys in a couple weeks.
Boom.
This has been the Enduring Church Podcast with Nathan Castleberry and Michael Davis. We'll see you next time.